If you've ever heard Seth's famous phrase from The Nature of Personal Reality and other books that you create your own reality, then you've heard the conclusion, you've heard the goal, but you probably missed the map, because Seth didn't simply tell us that we create our own reality. He spent years explaining how reality is built, our role within it, and how we can actually master this and why we're here. And that's the part that a lot of people overlook. They try to get to the destination. If you spend years trying to change your life through affirmations or visualizations, positive thinking, that type of thing, but the patterns keep returning, you're just not getting anywhere, you need a better map. You need to understand how you create your own reality, not just the destination. And so today I want to show you Seth's map of the use of consciousness, because once you understand where physical reality is actually organized by you and other portions of yourself, you'll know exactly what to do. And you can begin working with the right mechanisms in the right way. So by the end of the video, you'll understand why Seth's model is so different from almost every other manifestation teaching. And in my experience of 35 years working with this area, then it's much better than anything else that you'll find. Now imagine that somebody hands you a map and they point to one place and say, that is your destination, that you create your own reality, that you can create what you want. Well, that's useful, but it's not nearly as useful as understanding exactly where you are right now and how the journey actually works, how it unfolds and what you need to do. And that's what I see happening with people who read the Seth Material. A lot of people remember the destination. You create your own reality. That becomes the focus. But few remember the map that explains how. And that's actually far more important. And of course, in this new age, even fewer teachers know how this works either. Now, Seth describes two fundamentally different environments. He calls them Framework 1 and Framework 2. Framework 1 is physical reality. It's this place that we experience whilst we are in waking reality. Everything you experience through your five senses, your relationships, people, time, space, the money that you have, the career, everything that you see in physical reality in every second of your life, it's the world of the physical experience. That's Framework 1. Framework 2, that's the inner creative environment where physical reality is actually organized before it appears physically. So think of an architect. When you walk into a finished house, what you're seeing is the end result of all the planning and the processes. But the architect didn't begin with a finished house. The architect began with some kind of blueprint, an understanding of processes that are real and practical that lead to the creation of the building. That's Framework 2. The blueprint and all the processes exist before the building was built. And that's exactly what Seth's map is showing us. If you've tried to change your circumstances, it might be relationships, it might be your body, your finances, your health, it doesn't matter what it is, but you've been working here in physical reality in Framework 1 in order to try and change it, you've been trying to redesign a finished house instead of changing the blueprint and using the processes that work. So later in the video, I'm going to give you a simple exercise, a simple question, if you like, that helps reveal the blueprint that your inner self is actually organizing your life around. Because once you discover that blueprint, which is openly available to you, it's not hidden in any way, shape or form, you know exactly where lasting change begins and how to create it. Now, this is where Seth introduces an essential understanding, one of his most important ideas, the idea of the inner self and its role in manifesting, creating reality. He sometimes calls it the inner ego. And you are part of that inner self. It's part of you. You are part of it. The outer self is the part that you're living in, everyday physical life, the one that you think of as yourself. That self experiences the world through the five senses. It experiences time. It experiences the body. It's very visceral. You can't get away from it. It experiences and interacts with Framework 1, time, space, sound, sight, all those types of things. The inner self operates very differently and has a different role. The inner self organizes and projects the physical reality that the outer self, the physical self, experiences. So just stop and think about that for a second. The outer self, the physical self, experiences. The inner self organizes. We're all part of the same gestalt of consciousness, but we have different roles. And that's a different model of conscious creation than you'll find in other places. Most manifestation teaching focuses on the conscious mind. Change your thoughts, raise your vibration, visualize what you want, meditate for a few hours and hope something happens. But Seth's map points to something much deeper, something much more reliable. Seth tells us how and exactly how. The conscious mind then experiences physical reality through the five senses. The inner self organizes that physical reality. And what does it organize from? Well, our beliefs. Not our passing thoughts, not our wishes or things that we just think about every now and again, not affirmations you repeat for 10 hours every morning or some meditation, but from your beliefs. They are the energy that the inner self uses to form your environment. And I do want to remind you that you are not your beliefs either. You choose your beliefs, but you are not them. And I've covered that in other videos I'll link up at the end. Now, this isn't just some interesting spiritual theory. It explains why millions of people struggle with manifestation. Someone can visualize abundance every single day. They can repeat all the affirmations. They can do positive thinking. They can work incredibly hard at jobs to try and create something or with their health. And yet they keep recreating exactly the same patterns. Well, that's because they're trying to change the finished building, if you like, while their blueprint has never changed in the first place. The outer self is asking for a different experience. We're saying, this is what I want. But the inner self, its role is to faithfully organize from the beliefs that we hold. That's exactly what Seth's map is showing us. And when you understand that, the question is no longer, how do I think more positively or raise my vibration or do some technique? They don't work. The question becomes, what beliefs is my inner self organizing my physical reality around? That's a completely different question. And it's the only important question. And I think that that's the question that Seth wants us to ask all along. Because once you understand that blueprint, as simple as it might appear, you stop fighting physical reality, you stop fighting yourself. You start understanding why physical reality continues to appear exactly as it does, even if you don't want it to appear that way. So now we've answered the question of how the inner self organizes your physical reality. It's through your belief system that you can choose. You can choose to believe whatever you like. But Seth immediately leads us into a bigger question. Why are we here? Why would we, our broader identity, limitless and immortal, create a world like this in the first place, or a reality like this? And we're going to get to that in a second because it's essential to understand. Now let's make this Sethian map practical. So imagine somebody wants more money. So they've struggled for finances and they want more money. Every morning, they found some kind of technique from some other teacher. They visualize abundance in some way, some kind of ritual, meditation, whatever. They repeat affirmations. They imagine a completely different future. They genuinely believe they're doing everything right within those processes. And yet months later, and we have all been here, the financial life or whatever you're trying to change looks remarkably similar. So what's happening? Well, according to Seth's map, the outer self, the physical self, is making a request. It's kind of hoping that reality will deliver because the physical self doesn't know the process at that point. But the inner self is organizing physical reality from something much deeper, not hope. It's from your beliefs, your expectations, and the emotional energy that gives those beliefs life. Now imagine somebody consciously says, but I really do want financially freedom. But underneath that, they believe that money's difficult, or that they don't deserve it, or that success isn't safe, or that rich people lose themselves, they don't have integrity. It's those beliefs that become the blueprint. And it's those beliefs that the inner self faithfully organizes framework 1 around. Not because there's any judgment involved, we're here to learn, as we'll talk about in the second, not because there's any testing or there's any failure in that way. Simply, this is how reality operates. Our thoughts become events. Think of the inner self like an architect. You hand it a set of plans. The architect doesn't argue with them. So your inner self doesn't say, no, but you deserve this and you deserve that and you should have a bigger house or more money, whatever it is. It doesn't try and improve your beliefs. Its role is to faithfully build what you have given it. And Seth suggests the inner self works in exactly the same way. Think of it as, again, like an architect. The inner self, the portion of you in framework 2, faithfully translates, often symbolically, your beliefs into physical experience, which means changing your life isn't simply about asking or hoping for something different. It's about understanding that the beliefs you give to the inner self is going to organize your life around them. That's how you guarantee success. Success becomes consistent when you know that. But it's also why two people can use exactly the same manifestation techniques, whatever it would be, and achieve completely different results, because the techniques happen in framework 1. The beliefs organizing those results exist already in framework 2. And before I show you how to discover those beliefs, which is something you have to be able to do and learn to change them, we need to answer a bigger and important question that I think is going to help you, because it helped me, which is, why does physical reality exist at all? because Seth's answer completely changes how we look at our life and the challenge of conscious creation and manifestation and why we're here. So here's a part of the Seth's teaching that I think has a huge impact. And that's understanding why we're here at all. And that was important for me. Why am I here? It's a key question we all have. And in my experience, if we don't know the answer to that, why we're here, then we can begin to resent this place. It can seem overly harsh, frustrating, difficult, amazing too. But when you know why you're here, then you can understand the challenge that you've set yourself. So physical reality isn't simply somewhere we happen to live by some cosmic accident. According to Seth, we've chosen to focus ourselves into this particular physical reality for a specific reason. And he says this: you are in physical existence to learn and understand that your energy, translated into feelings, thoughts, and emotions, causes all experiences. There are no exceptions. And that's from the Nature of Personal Reality. So just pause for that for a second and let that sink in. Because what that means is that physical reality isn't simply where life happens accidentally. It's where we discover how to use our identity, to use consciousness to create. Think about that. A belief is invisible. An expectation is invisible. An emotion is invisible. We can't see any of them. We can feel emotions, of course, but we can't see them out there anywhere. So how do you discover what you're actually creating from the results of your beliefs? Well, physical reality translates the invisible into visible experience. It makes beliefs visible. It makes expectations visible. It objectifies them so we get a way to understand them. It makes emotional energy visible. Effectively, your inner world becomes your outer world. And that's why physical reality is so important. It's not separate from you or your use of consciousness. It's a learning environment where we discover how the energy of beliefs, expectations, and emotional energy become events. And that means that every experience needs to become feedback, not punishment, feedback to us individually. Reality is constantly reflecting the beliefs the inner self is organizing from. Once you begin to see your life that way, then questions, ideas change. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Why am I a victim? You begin asking, what is this experience showing me about the beliefs that I'm creating from? Reality stops being the enemy. You stop being a victim to it. It becomes the teacher. And I think that's one of Seth's greatest insights. And certainly for me, it made a huge difference in my life. And there's one final thought, one idea I'd like to leave you with. And this isn't something that Seth talks about overtly. It is littered throughout the Seth Material. But also it's really helped me with my own understanding after studying this work for 35 years or so. That if the inner self, with its broad view of reality, is organizing physical reality, we need to understand it's got a much broader view, much broader perspective than the physical self. The physical self sees a problem now, today, in time and space. But the inner self sees a much broader journey. And sometimes we're convinced we need a particular outcome at a certain time, a certain relationship or a certain amount of money that has to come in a particular way, a certain job, a certain career. But the inner self sees something that we don't. It's outside of space and outside of time. It has a much broader view of all of reality and our experience. And therefore, it often knows that another experience, another opportunity, or another sequence of events will serve our growth much more usefully than the one we're actually asking for today. That doesn't mean that we become passive in any way, shape, or form. Quite the opposite. We need to consciously choose our beliefs. We consciously learn from the feedback that physical reality provides, but then we need to learn to trust the inner self. We are part of it. It's us. We need to trust it to organize those beliefs into an experience that is good for us. Because the inner self isn't separate, as I say, it's a deeper part of who we are, of our identity. And learning to trust the inner self is really learning to trust ourselves and reality. And as that trust grows, we naturally begin trusting reality itself much more. Not because reality always gives us exactly what we want when we want, but because it faithfully shows us what we're creating from when we need it, and that reality is basically good and loving as we are. Now, understanding Seth's map is one thing. Learning to use it, that's completely another thing. And that's what we have to do. We have to commit to the practical use of this. So let me give you an exercise and leave you with this. Choose one area of your life that keeps repeating in a way that you don't want it to. That could be money, of course, it could be relationships, it could be health, it could be anything at all. It could be confidence or some kind of success that you're seeking that hasn't happened. Anything where the same experience keeps returning. Now ask yourself this one question. If this experience is simply feedback, that's what it is, what belief would my inner self have to be organizing around for this experience to keep showing up? What I suggest is you don't answer this too quickly. Actually sit with the question. You might want to pause this, go and get a cup of coffee and do it. But become curious, become the observer of your beliefs. Remember, you're not your beliefs. You're the person who chooses your beliefs. You're not trying to judge yourself either. You're just trying to understand your beliefs. You're trying to discover the beliefs that are organizing the experience that you keep having that you don't want. Because once you discover those beliefs, and that is a skill you have to learn, then you know where the work you have to do is. Instead of fighting in framework 1 and doing meditations and spiritual techniques, you simply begin changing what's being organized in framework 2. And as you learn to change those beliefs, physical reality begins to change with them. That's just how it works. It's automatic and consistent. It's exactly what Seth's map has been showing us from the beginning. And often people think it's too simple, but actually it's the only way to make changes. So when people say, Seth taught that you create your own reality, that's essential to know. Other spiritual teachers have picked that up and share those ideas. But that's not the real breakthrough that you're going to have. The breakthrough is understanding how and taking that journey in line with this map, learning the practical processes to actualize that for yourself. So we have a map. Seth gave us a map and it works consistently. I've been using it for 35 years. It shows how physical reality is not random, but it's not punishment, it's not fate, it's simply feedback. It's consciousness and identity learning how to create. As I say, once you understand the map, your life stops being something that's happening to you. It becomes something that's teaching you. We volunteered for this, remember that. Every recurring event, every relationship, every challenge, every success, every experience, they're all inviting us to discover the beliefs that the inner self is using to organize our experience from. And when those beliefs change, your experience of physical reality changes with them. That is the law of attraction. And if you need some help getting started with your beliefs, I've got a free training called the Belief Blueprint. You're welcome to it. It will help you uncover the deeper beliefs, finding the recurring patterns in your life, and show you where you can create lasting change. The link will be in the description below. And if you have any questions, do add them into the comments. I do try and read everyone and answer them. That's it. Do consider subscribing if you found it useful. Do like the video, share it with somebody who needs it. And as I say, comment with any questions below. And I'll see you on the next one. That's it. Take care.